and we're ready to show it off.
Great. Well, very clear from the get-go. I'm going to move forward to the moment where WND start making their way towards A, because it was very obvious what they were trying. We get towards A, we give up D completely. Now, as I've been saying before, if you can get into this sort of position where you secure A and you leave them with one cap only, this is the dream scenario for WND. And the choice that Rain made was, if you pay attention to what happened before WND get into that cap, early on they have double Ragnar and C in the middle, Rain, to try to capture it. Instead of finishing up that capture and securing that cap by cycling the radar and cycling the DD entrances into C, Rain decided to move double Ragnar back to A, hoping they could maybe stop WND from getting that cap at all, or retake it quickly. The problem is WND had a Des Moines, a Stalingrad, and 2 destroyers cycling smokes near A, making it really impossible for these Ragnars to actually get that cap back. The Ragnars spent a lot of time circling above A trying to get it, and they couldn't. At which point WND really took a big point lead. It didn't help that Rain allowed this Grozovoi to move back into D, but the problem is they needed this Yueyang to get C, which has been their only cap for a long time, before they could send their Des Moines back into D.
Look, exactly at this position that you just paused,
Yep.
things didn't look very well for Rain. Let's be honest. Like, the moment that WND took cap D with that single Grozovoi,
Yep.
and you see that gigantic push towards A, you would think the game might very soon be over. But then again, at the same time, WND missed sinking any of those ships near
Exactly, and it's
north.
super important that Rain didn't allow WND to kill anyone. Rain didn't lose a single ship this game. They knew this push was coming from WND, because what WND did last week with the very control-based strat with equal ships on all cap, Rain knew this wasn't going to happen from WND. This is not their playstyle. Their playstyle is to play aggressive and push somewhere really fast. Now, at this very point in the game, it's triple cap for WND, 2 minutes 30 on the clock until they win. Very tense situation for Rain. Very well played by Artorius, who realized this, and he went back into D. He started actually sailing back into D before even the Yueyang had started capturing D. He knew what was going on, he knew what the threat was, and thankfully he made that move in time.
So Artorius is the Des Moines player,
Artorius
right?
is the Des Moines player. As you can see, he's going to get back into D, at which point WND still are in the lead. So Rain are in a position where they need to capture A, or at least keep it contested with the 2 Ragnars, and they need to get kills. Now, they made an extremely good job at isolating this Ohio with the Ragnar farm and the incomparable Vermont Crossfire to get this Ohio kill, and then carry on getting this Des Moines kill, which means as you remove ships on WND side in the middle, it increases the pressure that you put on the cluster of ships that's on the very left side. The Stalingrad came low, the Vincent Gent low. They even ended up killing the Stalingrad, securing that win for Rain, because as long as like if you manage to remove these ships, make them reverse from A, then obviously your Ragnars are allowed to make the contest, stall the points, and get that good comeback win for Rain. Very well played.
Amazing. Render tool?
Yeah, we have the rendered replay. We're going to be able to dig a bit more into what happened. As we see, very balanced disposition of ships. Like, no push anywhere, just trying to control. It's interesting to look at basically what tools do both teams have on each cap. On A, it was a pure 3 versus 3.
Right.
And on B and C, because B and C are more or less interconnected, it was like Des Moines in the middle, right here, and Stalingrad right here for Rain, and like 3 versus 2 at sea in terms of cruisers and destroyers, which quickly changed into a 3 versus 3 because the Ragnar from WND very quickly moved from B to C. And this is where the game shifted, because Rain's Ragnar, as we can see, remained on B, but was always countered by double radar by WND. The Des Moines sitting in the island chain and the Moskva reversing all the way from A to B were really capable of denying the Ragnar the B cap. So the Ragnar was stuck on B trying to control it, while his supposed opposition, WND's Ragnar, rotated quickly to C in order to bring that suppressive additional radar which kept Rain from touching C for a very, very long time.
Yeah, it seems like the Des Moines parked next to that island, kind of in the middle of the ship, being able to influence both B and especially C.
Yep.
Was really crucial for WND's victory and map control in this game, right?
Exactly, because if we make a simple count, we have one demon on the 10 line, one demon on the 6 line, and one Ragnar. That's 3 radars capable of acting on C, whereas Rain only had their Minotaur. That's only one radar. At some point, the Ragnar rotated back to C further in the game to get the radar coverage, but it was too late and it wasn't enough. The strength of the Des Moines on the 6-7 line was that it was capable of providing radar on B and on C. What you try to do usually once you realize the Des Moines is positioned there is you want to find a way to dig it out. You want to find a way to position your battleships in a position to crossfire that Des Moines and have the shore perma-spot that guy, most usually from this area, which I'm going to highlight with my little mouse here. This sort of area on B, you want to have a DD sit there to counter this Des Moines position. Perma-spot it and have your BBs fire at it. Rain never did it. Maybe they didn't have the time. In the end, it's the obvious counter to that Des Moines, which wasn't used, which allowed this Des Moines to freely contest both caps on full HP for a very long time. He even was able, as we move a bit further into the development of this game, he was even able to move to this position, right? As you can see, he makes the switch from the top of this island here. We're looking at the 5-6 line Des Moines, actually 6-7 line Des Moines, to the second island, which is much more aggressive, and it gives a much sharper angle on the DD, the red destroyer from him that's contesting C. You see, this is the moment when Sheep, as the gearing on C from Rain, dies. Once this Des Moines makes this unspotted, aggressive rotation to the more aggressive island. This is a great move that was not countered by Rain because they did not have the appropriate DD position to spot this Des Moines and did not have the appropriate battleship positions to fire at this Des Moines. As we see, the Vermont is stuck in the middle. Maybe this has something to do with the battleship pick. Battleship Vermont, slow, good guns, but you can't move it to everywhere you want on the map. You can't commit your Vermont to the 9-10 line because then, if you need it in the middle at some point, it's completely unable to quickly reposition, which means this Des Moines was free to do whatever he wanted, and that won the C cap for the entire game for WND.
Lulu, let me ask you this. Was there ever a moment in this game where you thought that Rain can bring it back, somehow turn the tide of this game? Because I remember there was this moment where we had a Rain push towards A, especially with that Ohio.
Yeah, the issue is we see that WND, they held the cap for the most part. At some point, it was 800 points to 300 or 400 for Rain. When you reach this kind of amount of points as the leading team, you can literally drop all caps but 1 or even 0 at times and still win the game by running away. This is how important it is to gain a sizable point lead at the very start. And Rain, even if they had pushed everyone, sent everyone, and got 2 kills, I don't think they would even have 1. Right? Because the point lead was so big. And this means, I believe, the game was over maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes ago even, before the actual end of the game. Because when you let the enemy get such a big point lead, there's usually no coming back, especially when you're facing such experienced teams as WND. And one more crucial thing, which I need to mention, if we get back to the earlier stages of the game, on A, it was a 3 versus 3. You are not supposed in these very competitive games to lose a 3 versus 3. You can lose when you're facing much superior forces, which means you will compensate on other caps because you'll be facing fewer forces. You absolutely cannot afford to lose a cap for such a long time when you're in the 3 versus 3. We are at 10 minutes of the game clock, and A is in the hands of WND. If we get back to minute 14, it's in the hands of WND still. So they capped it and never let Rain get back into it until it was too late. In a 3 versus 3. It is a big mistake or a big... It's one of the reasons for the Rain's loss is that they let WND get hands on A, for way too long in an equal scenario, which you usually don't want to see happen.
Thank you for this analysis. I mean, this is very insightful, honestly. A lot of things go over my head, and I'm sure through some of the viewers as well. but you make it super clear. We've talked already about the cruiser and battleships impact on this game. Do you think was there anything specific about the picks and how did the destroyers behave? Or
I think it was it came down to Gangberang in his Marceau eating a lot of damage early on, and the Ragnar from WAD basically out-rotating Rain's Ragnar. Rain's Ragnar was stuck contesting B for a long time, no result, while the Ragnar on WND's side was hammering C and ship with radar and hammering him trying to when he was trying to contest the cap. Out-rotating and overall better DD positioning. Gearing on A, captured while Arugumo was further back. Overall better play from WND on the DD and cruiser side, I must say.
I just have a question from Cast.
Go ahead.
We talked a lot about destroyers and cruisers as the ship who turn the tide of the battles and have the most impact. What about the battleships? Because most of the game, even at the middle, you still see on both teams battleships still playing sort of backline, still very healthy, until, for example, Rain pushes Malibu in Ohio into it to try to flip something. But what happened with the other two Vermonts on each teams and the Vermont on Rain's side?
Well, they were sort of cancelling each other out, right? What you want as a battleship is to make sure your counterpart on the enemy side isn't doing so much more than you are doing yourself. In that case, it wasn't too big of an issue. They were just trying to both support their team on their sides. This game wasn't lost on BBs because by the times you're supposed to have your BB's HP enter into play much when enemy lines try to get thinner, it was already over because the DD and cruiser rotations battle was already won by WND. So there wasn't much more for Rain to do. Malimu's push on A in his Ohio was the push to make in that very specific scenario. It was simply too late. As same for Daster's push on B in his Vermont, trying to get angles on this Des Moines, but it was too late. Yeah, not really a game where you can talk too much about the battleships because they really did not have that big of an impact. The only thing I would say from a tactical point of view is maybe Rain should have found a way to dig this Des Moines out of this very key position on the 7 line, and they were unable to.
All right. I'm hearing from our producers that the teams are getting ready for the next game, so let's...
Ready. Now, off we go.
We're ready.
So, we see it. Actually, do you have the moving version displayed? Yes, you do have the moving version displayed. Great.
Perfect.
Same as the first one. Massive 8-1 split for WND. We can see that Rain took a little bit of time to understand that they were actually rushing heavy on A, because this is something you can guess once you look at the lineup, more or less. Or actually, like you can guess that WND, because they've done it first on the first map, they are susceptible of going for a massive split again, like 7-1, 7-2, 8-1. But you can't really know for sure before a certain amount of ships are spotted where they're actually pushing it. So this is why we saw Des Moines, Vermont, Double DD and Minotaur and C be rather cautious with their approach and not sail into the free C cap before they realize that, hey, the main force of WNG is actually going towards A. As soon as they see that Grozovoy on the 1 line aggresses the Des Moines, they understand that the main force is at A. Because what actually happened, the Madara in the Des Moines got spotted through fire detection debuff in smoke. The Grozovoy went as close to the Des Moines as to trigger the smoke firing penalty, which is 8 kilometers. It's an insanely aggressive move from the Grozovoy, which for sure on Rain's side lets them know that the massive push is coming on A. At which point, directly they understand that Ragnar has to make its way towards C in order to cap the free base.
It did take Rain a bit longer, I think, this time to realize what's happening in the map, right?
Yeah, you want to take it extra cautious. As I said, there are many islands on Shatter which block line of sight of many approaches, right? You can really make it closer to objectives on Shatter without being acknowledged by the enemy, which is why it took a bit longer for Rain to figure out exactly what was going on, because you obviously cannot miss your read there. You cannot misread the situation, because if you misread the situation and send a lone destroyer bomb rushing 9-10 because you know the cap is empty and there's actually a sizable force there, you lose the game instantly, right? So you need to be cautious about it.
Can we talk a little bit briefly about the ship picks this time? Because we had some unusual choices for a competitive tournament, right? We had a Worcester, we had a Houdenloo.
Yeah, the Lulu is fairly popular in Shatter because, as I said, everyone is really bunched up, very close to each other. We saw for the entire game Vermont on B and Ohio daring Worcester sitting like mere 2-3 kilometers next to each other, which are situations in which the Lulu really shines. And we could see that he got a few bomb drops off, would have been maybe stronger near B, not too sure. But what's really interesting about this game from a strategic point of view is the massive push that WND started on the 1-2 line to get this Moskva kill. They want the Moskva dead on Rain's side because this Moskva is the lock on B. Once you get rid of this Moskva, you can envelop B. The ideal scenario for WND was you kill the Moskva, have a freeway for your destroyer inside B because then only the Des Moines can radar, and you envelop basically the enemies this way, as I'm drawing on the map, to have a better situation on B for your team. The thing is, Rain managed to keep their Moskva alive because they counter-pushed the one-line WND force. As you can see, at this very moment, Ohio, Des Moines, Gearing, they turned back. They turned back. Right now, we can see their position progress right here. They turned back into the Des Moines, Arugumo, Grozovoi force because they realized that they were sitting pretty, farming the Moskva from their 1-2-3 line area. They needed to repush this green WND force in order to remove the angles that they were having on the Moskva, which kept the Moskva alive, which was extremely, extremely key. This repush was very key. Rain was able to get the caps early. The C cap was gotten earlier than A. They kept B contested all the time, which meant WND were never really able to make up for the 50 points difference they had, which really forced them to make the moves. Because had things standed for the entire game like this, Rain was going to win on points. So WND were forced to make the moves. They ended up losing ships for that, securing that Rain win. It was extremely strategic, extremely close. Very, very good game. And I think now we can move to the one that's awaiting us.
Exactly.
Cloud versus Shaft.
Yep.
And they outmaneuvered Rain from the very beginning. Now, as Rain, do you believe that you can outmaneuver them playing control again? Or do you already notice that it's not going to cut it and try to come up with very creative, aggressive strategies directly from the second game of this best of 5?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very good answer to my question, I have to say.
Look, let's move on to the actual rendering. As I said, relatively balanced. 4 on the left on A, 3 on C, and 2 in the middle. That being said, we could clearly see from the get-go that the main focus of Penta on that map was the A area. They set up a pincer to control A without negotiation and move on from there. They snailed the Kremlin with that destroyer, the specific destroyer smoke from the
Vampire 2.
Thank you, the
Can
Vampire 2.
we talk about this play?
Yes.
This seemed impossible to me.
What I want to highlight about this is that it's creativity. It's the sort of creativity you only see from the very, very best teams. They sat around a TS channel and said, okay, how do we come up with something that's going to surprise them? And how do we make sure that we lock A and potentially lock B as well, or at least get a good grasp on that cap? We need to get a Kremlin mid. How do we get a Kremlin mid? We use the Vampire Smoke. That's going to snail him right into B. And it worked. And you could see very clearly after we move to more or less this moment that Penta had Schlieffen into A at the island and Kremlin into B. Not into B directly, but to the left at the island. Compare it with Rain's battleship positions. Vermont, sort of in the kiting position in the open, further away from the objective. Ohio completely merely made it out of spawn, looking for an overview of the map, looking for crosshairs maybe. But while you're playing this game and you let the enemies get their BBs into position right in the middle of the map, denying your team any sort of map control, you're losing little by little. You're losing positions. You're letting them play the game as they want, basically. What's really interesting to see, and this is why I used the term surgical as I started analyzing this game, they picked out certain ships they wanted dead and killed them. The Salem, that was near B, they set up Schlieffen Arugumo smoke on A. They set up Arugumo Moskva smoke on B. They had this Vampire 2 Hydro that they knew that was going to be used for that from the get-go. picked out the Salem. A minute later, he was gone.
You know,
It's-
that's crazy that you're saying that they wanted some ships dead and they did it, and that actually happened.
Yeah, because they knew that potentially Rain was going to play a ship there on that B island, because you cannot really contest B efficiently if you completely disregard this island from either spawn. So they knew there was going to be something to pick up there. Should it be a BB? Should it be a cruiser? Should it be a destroyer pack there? And they had the right tools to deal with that, and Rain was left without an answer. But it hats off. Rain did not really misplay. They played a rather calm and collected early game, sent 3 left, 3 right, 3 center, and they sort of got a feel for the game and tried to get into it. But Penta took the positions from Rain and told them what are you going to do about it, pretty much. And Rain was left without answer, because when you let Penta get into their game, just play their positions that they want, and set up the farming position to trade positively, it's already over most of times.
You know, looking at Rain's ship picks, you see literally almost the same composition that they chose when they played against WND, plus the Kleber, which was always banned, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we need to talk about the choice of, for example, Alvaro de Bazan.
Look, the thing is, they didn't really have to show that pick's value. The Alvaro de Bazan could have been a Grozovo in that spot. I'm not sure it would have changed much, honestly. I'm not sure why they picked it. Maybe Blood Legend will give us an answer if he's the one that's interviewed at the end, or only if we do interviews. Maybe he'll tell us what was the idea behind that, but they didn't even have to show their hand in that regard and show why the Alvaro de Bazan was picked. I'm not sure. I'm not going to say and claim I have a reason for that. I don't really see it now. But it's interesting, and it shows that they have this creativity that is required to adapt to each map and come up with the very best solutions for every single position. So it's very impressive from Penta. A very, very strong opening game.
Well,
Definitely.
amazing first match for Penta, former known as TWA. Yes,
yeah.
apologies. What is the next map?
It's down at this moment. And Rain tried to pick up on this sort of rushed Des Moines push in the right way, in my opinion. But sadly, this, I think, misposition of Gangbarang around this island cost them the game. Because at this point, you're 1 ship down, you lose one of the assets you need to get 1 kill on Penta's team. And it's too hard to come back when you do this, when you lose 1 ship against Penta. It's just too hard.
Yeah. Well, we have our tool ready.
Yes, we have
so
the
we
tool.
can go a bit deeper into
Yep.
what actually happened.
Yep. I'm going to simply highlight what I just discussed. So I'm going to move straight to this Des Moines action. Penta had the issue that I highlighted for Rain against WND on this very same map, the previous series. Rain were 4 versus Penta's 4 on A, and they held the cap. When you're in this kind of situations, you can't allow the enemy to hold the cap for the entire game when it's a 4 versus 4, because then you're net losing on points. So they realized this. Let me move forward a little bit. And when they move the Des Moines into A, they have nearly 100 points deficit, 80, right? And this deficit is only growing because they have 2 caps to 1 at their deficit, right? So they initially have this smoke. The Moon has to bail out of the smoke a bit, and then he pushes, and the entire section of the push after the smoke to the island is in the open. So he hits a bit of damage, at which point Gangbarang's Marceau decides to move in. Now, if we look at the position here, if Gangbarang reaches this position of the island, which I'm gonna try to point out with my tool, like sort of this side of the little island in the middle, he's actually rather safe. I think that the issue he faced was plunging fire from the Harugumo that's sitting there, and the Des Moines, and potentially also the Ohio. He rushed to get behind cover, didn't negotiate his approach well, I would guess, and was then forced to move out in the open and die. Had it been able to sit behind the island there, he would have been able to clearly farm the Des Moines that's sitting on the left of A and kill him. This would have forced a Moskva push that we saw from behind. Now, this Moskva push was to be expected on Rain's side, right? with Lucas taking this position, gang barang, you expect Penta to need to find a way to counter that. The obvious way is for the Moskva that they knew was parked there to push into the cap from behind, because as we see it for Rain, B area is completely empty. They needed to put the Vermont of Dastert further this way into B to counter the Moskva's push. Sadly, we see that Dastert did it, but like 30 seconds too late.
It was already too late.
30 seconds
exactly.
too late, the Moskva is gone. This is the kind of timings that you cannot afford to miss when you're playing against such teams, because this is the difference between getting a kill, not getting a kill, winning a game, or losing a game. From when the Moskva, the Marceau was gone, the lock on A was removed, more or less. They were able to park the Ohio there, get the Stalingrad to a low enough HP count here, so that he was not really able to peek out and contest the Ohio anymore. And from there on, it became difficult for Rain, because Penta managed to get C back, and yeah, it was over. But the early game was promising for Rain. It's a bit of a shame that this gangbang push didn't go well, because I think it would have given them a chance to make this series 1-1.
Yeah. Well, Rain obviously right now under a lot of pressure. This will be the deciding game for them.
Yeah, this will be the deciding game. Not deciding for their tournament life, because should they lose, they would be sent to loser bracket with another chance to win the loser bracket and meet Penta again in the big final.
Well, we have the render of the game ready, so let's get to it.
Yeah. We have the render, and I'll directly start by looking at this Des Moines, right? We see the Des Moines of Artorias in the middle of the map. It's actually C, not B, since we're on a quad cap layout. He goes for the usual Des Moines position. Now, this Des Moines position has strength because it allows you to get good control of C, and the island is good enough for cover. But it has one big weakness. It is open to farming from a lot of areas on the map. Mainly the area I'm highlighting here, this side of the map. Obviously, you can shoot at this Des Moines, provided the Des Moines is spotted either by radar or by C spotting, hard spotting. They had the Worcester to provide for radar in this position, and very, very intelligently they set up a Ragnar here. Now, we often see destroyers using this area, should it be from south or from north, to kind of mess with the C contest by spotting the support. It's important to spot the support and put the support of C uncomfortable, or B depending on the layout, so you can allow your DD to make it in without losing too much health and capturing the base. They had this Ragnar set up to perma-spot the Des Moines, and very important, the Ragnar from Rain wasn't set up in the same area. He was trying to contest, and it's going to play a big role. Second aspect, you set up perma-spot. You also want to set up farm, because if you spot a target but have no target, nothing to shoot at it, it's kind of pointless. They did that by sending the Marseille into this position. The casters picked up on it as an unusual position. It was for the very purpose of shooting at this Des Moines with a clear line of sight. Because they knew Des Moines was going to park there, or maybe a Stalingrad, or maybe a Moskva. They set up the perma spot, they set up the firepower with Marseille here and Ohio here, and these two ships are the ships which killed the Des Moines. And Rain had no answer for it, because the Ragnar came back too late.
Could have Rain done anything about that Ragnar spotting the Des Moines?
Yes, well, look at the game progress. Look at the Ragnar here. Look at this Ragnar making the move like this. He makes it. It's too late though. It is too late, because when you pick up on things too late against Penta, they don't give you the time to recover. Maybe Artorius could have played this slightly differently, in the sense that this position he was in, this Des Moines position, is totally unsafe if a destroyer is allowed to perma-spot you from here. But maybe he could have realized that by this Ragnar moving here, this perma-spot position was going to be unavailable for Penta moving forwards into the game. But he panicked a bit, thinking that the Worcester radar and the Marseille position, and potentially the Ragnar coming back when this friendly Ragnar was out of radars, could still threaten the position, and figured out his best bet for long-term survival was to exit from the island, instead of sitting there waiting for a more or less certain death. Often it's the right choice, and maybe in that position, it was the good choice to make. Sadly, his gamble failed, because He was on fire. He was spotted by the Daring, who even shot at him. I will see the game progress. The Daring is sitting there, hard spotting Artorius from the back and even shooting at him. Yeah, it was very, very well played from Penta. You can see this tendency they have to preemptively set up ships for a spot they think will be used by the enemy and surgically farm the enemy down. It seems like there's no counter to it because Rain didn't anticipate this possibility. It's their mistake, I guess.
Can you explain one more thing to me? Because I'm very curious, why did Penta choose 2 Marseilles for this game? How are they different than choosing a Des Moines for it or a Moskva?
First reason, it's the speed. You want to be in a position to farm the Des Moines ASAP before the Des Moines realizes that the perma spot will become a problem. He was in position so fast with the Marseille speed boost that he could begin the farm on the middle Des Moines from the get-go. This was really important. And the earlier you get into a position, the earlier you put the enemy in a situation where they have to react about it and are put on the back foot, right? Because you have double Marseille sitting at the island. They set up the Marseilles very well, one pointing towards mid, one pointing towards the 1 line on the outside. Sit there, be in a dominant position, and ask Rain, the hell are you going to do about it? If you want to dig me out, you're going to have to send ships to trade. The thing is, the purpose of these Marseilles is complete from the moment that the Des Moines is dead. The Des Moines dead means that the Marseilles here are they've basically made their purpose, they are fulfilled their purpose, and whatever they rack up in terms of killer damage from there on is bonus. Rain tried to come back in this game by sending stuff at these Marseilles to dig them out. They send the Vermont, they send a Gearing and Des Moines to try to get the kills. They didn't trade horribly on that side, but it was already too late.
Right. And what do you think about the choice of incomparable when it comes to Rain and that incomparable rush that we saw on the 10 line?
Well, what's good with the incomp is that it's fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to get the BB in Rain's idea. You get the BB fast in the 10 line and gain the position, because if you bring a faster battleship than your opponent, you're able to get it in a critical position on one side sooner than the opponent battleship will be, which means you're going to have an easier time bullying the enemy out of the position you're interested in. This is what Rain tried there, and it worked because it was a 3 versus 3, more or less. We can count this Moskva here as a support on D, but it was not extremely crucial to the situation that unfolded down there. And they actually got the upper hand on D because they just brute forced into the cap with a fast BB, Des Moines Gearing, and got D, no questions asked, right? This was nice, but it went wrong on the other side. Incomparable is a good pick. You have the speed, you have the great laser guns to maybe impact the other side with crossfires. Nothing much to say about this pick, honestly.
Right. Well, there we have it.
Yeah, maybe
one of our
Robin-
casters has a
Robin had
question.
a question.
Yeah, I just have a question for casting, because from casting perspective, the incomparable push at least passed the F line, in my opinion. Now, I am not an analyst and I'm not a specialist at all, but I feel like it was not needed. I feel like they could have potentially turned the incomparable away and allowed her to survive, because yes, incomparable can overmatch Ohio, but in a straight fight, a kiting Napoli, farming Ragnar and an Ohio that basically can deal with an incomparable rather easily. I don't understand why the incomparable decided to send it even though the decap was already sort of covered.
The answer actually is self-explanatory. This is the moment where they capture D, they know they're going to get it, and you're looking at the minimap here. Penta has 2 caps and a ship lead, one ship lead, and they have a points lead, nearly more than 100 points lead. On which cap, outside of B and of D and A, do you ever set foot when you're Rain, looking at the minimap here? You have nowhere near enough forces to sail into C with your Ragnar against double DD and Worcester. Des Moines, Gearing, Vermont will take so much time to get rid of the double Marseille and Ohio, if they even manage to get rid of them, which means you look at the minimap there, you're like, my only way out is to try to stomp the 9-10 line. Because if I stomp the 9-10 line by some sort of miracle and get 1-2 kills for no death, then maybe I give myself enough kills to claw it back in terms of global positions, because positions as we look currently are completely tragic for Rain, the overall strategic positioning. So the only option was to try to go for the kills. They tried to send it, it didn't work, but it was the only choice at that point.
As a caster perspective, I thought they wanted to have incomparable Crossfire de Marseille with spotter plane. But again,
it's very
long shots, very difficult to with slow. Yeah, okay. Thank you for answering, Lulu.
Now that you've pointed it out, it was either they make this push and they try their luck, or they
just leave a slow long death.
Exactly, which I have to respect that they went for the let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's your only choice, because you know, Penta, they're not going to hand you the kills. They're not going to hand you the positions back. They're not going to give all of that. You have to go and get your comeback yourself, and you have to try and take advantage of this sort of blitz rush, because when you're in the shoes of the income there, the BB being there can be a bit of a surprise. We see that when he made it past the island, he was in hard spotting distance of the Ragnar, which means Penta were kind of caught off guard, right? You don't really want to Ragnar 7 or 6 km away from an incomp, usually. So there was the possibility for Rain to try and get a kill or two there, which is what they went for, but this boost was properly and quickly crushed by Penta, and from there on it was just over.
All right.
Yep.
Well, I think that, let's get to it.
Hamsters woke up and they've been delivering. So we have the rendering, and I'm going to jump straight to the first important thing that happened in this game, I believe, on A, because we'll mostly be talking about A. C's been switching around between the teams, but the decisive stuff, in my opinion, happened on A. We see both teams going with 4 ships there and taking a bit of a different approach, right? Red team, WND, chilling with Des Moines gearing, one line, not committing to the island yet, we're seeing what's happening basically. Ohio pretty far back, and the Moskva turned towards B, not A. SHAFE, on the other hand, they have a push going for that island. They're aiming for that island with the fast battleship, the Vincent, the Smoke, the Des Moines. They want to get there and control A, right? So they get A from the get-go. Pretty dominant push, they don't lose much HP, if any, a bit on the Harugumo. And we're in a situation where 4 versus 4, rather 3 versus 4, because the Moskva is facing B, where green is holding the cap, and you don't really see a way back for WND. So great early game on A for SHAFE. Meanwhile, WND gets C. Okay, fair enough. It goes wrong when the Des Moines starts taking some punishment. Actually, I'm going the wrong way with the replay. Yeah, not want to go backwards. They tried to have this Des Moines push on the left, and then goes back. Like if we have it play like normally, Des Moines went. Let's reverse it a bit more. Yep, try to push for the left of the island with a gearing smoke, and then come back behind the island in sort of a weird reversing way. Moskva, in the meantime, as we see, is back. Moskva, which wasn't in the picture at first, facing towards B, reversed and is now facing towards A, which means our Des Moines now is caught in a precarious spot. And it's important, without a smoke, because they used the smoke to push it on the side of the island on the left. Now it means he's forced to run away. And when you're forced to run away in the open, it's trouble, because you don't have this island cover, you can be spotted by destroyers, and gotta say, WND reacted very well, because they felt this Des Moines was going to get in a precarious spot. He fled from the island. At the very same moment, they pushed back, gearing Des Moines into that to put the nail in the coffin, sort of. This is the difference between average teams, good teams, and great teams. They will figure out a weakness that they're already creating, or they're going to create, and will push where it hurts to get that kill. This is what WND did. They felt that Des Moines was in a precarious spot and got the kill.
Yet, does not change the outcome of that match.
Yeah, and this is where it gets interesting. They get that kill on the Des Moines, and the cap will actually never, ever turn red. Why that? Because SHAFE were smart enough to put their Vincent in the basically like inside the cap. They sailed the Vincent through inside the donut, while at the beginning WND were very passive. And once you have a battleship locking down the middle facing A, it makes it impossible for the north side to use this spot, which we've been seeing used a lot, to contest A, because the Vincent has such a dominant position here. And despite being one ship down, during the entire game, SHAFE managed to keep the lock on A without a radar, or without the Des Moines radar, because they still had the Stalins. It's pretty strong, because it was a 4 versus 3 there, and they managed to keep it. All because this smart Vincent positioning. It's not always a good idea to put your ships inside the donut, because they can get trapped. They can get shot from all angles, they cannot move a lot, they can get hydroed.
Well, we saw what happened to the Marceau in
Yes,
the
exactly.
Penta game.
But in this position, in this situation, the Vincent has a lot of heals, can heal very well, rather resistant to HE spam, which means WND weren't able to find a solution to dig this Vincent out of position, which means the Vincent for the entire game kept A locked despite having lost one ship, which is an achievement. WND weren't able to find a decisive move somewhere else on the map, which meant that SHAFE held on to their points until the very end and won a not mega convincing game, because they still lost a ship. They still lost a ship for nothing in return, but they were strong enough to keep the control, keep the strategical hold on the map, and win it. So yeah, it's a good one from SHAFE overall.
Well, I'm very curious if the next one will also keep this tempo of being.
So we have it ready right now. I'm going to open it and we can chat about like what SHAFE's choice was as far as their strategy is concerned, and how it impacted their chances to win, and actually how it, in my opinion, it caused their loss there. They made the choice, if we move forwards a bit, they made the choice to disregard C, right?
Yeah.
They playing against WND, they wanted to have them taste a bit of their own medicine by sending a heavy force to, let's say, one half of the map and only a lonely roaming DD to C. What does it mean? It means that by disregarding a cap, you give the enemy team the opportunity, once they figure it out, to get this cap for a cheap cost and capitalize of the room you're giving them strategically. If we
It is surprising because it's more of a move that we've expected from WND.
Yes. Actually, WND did not especially go heavy on C either. They had Vincent and Des Moines alone. So both teams played pretty heavy on A and B from the get-go, quite light on C, but WND's light force on C was not as light as SHAFE's light force on C, which gave them the upper hand at some point. And let's fast forward to when they get the cap. So let's reverse here. Okay. If we look at positions currently, SHAFE have their ships bunched up in this area of the map pretty much, right? So we could even go as far as cutting the map in like quarters, right? If you look at quarters of the map, how many quarters do SHAFE control? They control one. WND, and they have 1, 2 quarters, and this last quarter here, which is up for grabs.
Yeah,
it is
basically
up for
uncontested.
Grabs. It's uncontested, which means we could have very well ended up in a situation where the Vincent and Des Moines move up, which is what I think they should have done to close the match even sooner. Because here they have a Ragnar. The Vermont is low health on SHAFE's side, sitting in the middle. It's a bit far from coming there to contest the move, right? They have a Des Moines here that can maybe be smoked up by the Arugumo and move towards here, but it's a long shot. It's going to take time. All the time that could have been used by the Vincent and Des Moines to claw up there. And once you establish a Vincent here, and potentially a Des Moines sitting on the island, it's deadly crossfire for whatever is trying to support B on the green side there.
But then again, they are in a fairly safe situation right now, so maybe they were a bit afraid of risking it for no reason.
WND,
right?
They had a firm control of B, they had C. They maybe thought that it wasn't needed to go for this rush, but we saw that they lost. If we move a bit further into the game, they lost the daring. They were not in that comfortable of a spot. Had the Des Moines of SHAFE not died, WND could have been in trouble. It's not because your current situation is comfortable that you are not allowed to improve your position and build upon the ground your opponent is giving you, and take that ground and keep choking, keep increasing the pressure. I think they could have done that, because when you play light on one side, you need to push the other side hard. Basically, what I think SHAFE should have done with their strategy is, okay, we leave C completely open, but we want big compensation elsewhere, i.e. we push hard there, right? Which is what they did by the end. If we go forward a bit, they end up sending that smoke push there. But it's too late. It's too late because B is firmly in the control of WND, and WND, they have established very strong control over C and D. They are here in positions which are going to be very, very hard for SHAFE to dig out. They just were too slow with their A push, which means they did not compensate the loss of ground on C they willingly gave for a big advantage in positioning and gained ground on A, which in my opinion is a strategical problem that it's a mistake from my point of view by SHAFE. And the WND were able to capitalize on it, although as I pointed out with this C move there, they could have done a bit better. What else is there to say? Yeah, this push attempt was interesting, but WND were smart enough to spread their ships around. This is something that seems like nothing, but when you look at how WND dealt with the push, they sent the gearing on the side, Ohio kiting towards the border, Ragnar giving out DPM from a more middle-ish position, which means that SHAFE's push have to deal with targets split everywhere. They have torpedoes coming from their right. They have the crossfire of the Ohio on the border. They are looking at the Ragnar lit up in order to shoot at them. They will have to give like a broadside to something, right? Very well done by WND, spreading apart, making it difficult for SHAFE's push to get an easy goal, right? An easy pack of ships you want to push towards and you have to angle to, right? Well done by WND in that regard.
Yeah. Then we had this, one of the few, if not the only ram that we saw today, actually.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Vincent versus Vermont.
Yeah, it's good realization by the Vincent basically. When you're facing a BB versus BB situation at close range and you're one of the BB players, you have to think of the big picture and realize what are both achieving in the spot they are and what could they achieve if the ram is not made, right? Here we have the green Vermont from SHAFE in a rather strong position. He's in a position to go annoy the Des Moines if the Vincent doesn't do anything or fails the ram. He's in a position to go contest C and put pressure on the Ragnar, bully him away if it doesn't ram. So in that situation, the Vincent has all the interest in ramming the Vermont because in his position there, the Vincent is just basically a blocker, right? He's not going to be able to put crossfires on something. He's only valuable here because he's protecting this position from the enemy BB and protecting the Des Moines. Whereas if they both don't ram, and imagine the Vermont passes by the Vincent who dodges the ram because he wants to stay alive, all of a sudden the Vermont is in the middle of the map. He can rush both Des Moines. He can contest B. So very important for the Vincent to realize that the ram is the play there and just he makes it happen because when it gets to the end and you have the point lead, every ship trade obviously goes in the favor of the team with the point lead, and the Vincent rightfully recognized that and went for the obvious ram. So
that's very interesting and also a good call from the Vincent player for sure. All right, so I guess that's wrapped the analysis. What do we have in terms of the next map?
Yeah, because it's always interesting to put into image what we discuss afterwards and what we go through during the cast without having the possibility to calmly settle things down, sort of. WND, they went with their now usual approach of send one DD alone on one side and the rest focuses on AB. This time, thankfully, luckily for WND, their Danny was able to catch the cap early on, so that's always the extra points you can use. Obviously, SHAFE realized rather quickly what was going on, and they sailed back into C and got it. And they obviously now, after they do this, are focused on getting B, because the dynamics we see are interesting. One team goes to C heavy, with this sort of movement there, and one team goes to A heavy. We see, by the way, the trademark WND smoke train on the one line, just very, very methodical, right? You don't take any risk, you're careful with your pathing, go to the border and sail down, no stop.
It's not the first time it's happening today.
Yeah.
Let's see if it'll happen tomorrow and if their enemies learn from it.
It's interesting because you don't want to act about it really fast. You set up this position on the one line, you push the enemies away, and you take advantage of the position. This basically pays dividends later on, and it will illustrate. Because Shaft, they get C, and they disregard like pushing past C. Because there's nothing to hit at, right? You're not going to chase a Delny. Delny is just going to run away, right? You can't outspot it easily with the destroyer. You just can't damage it like efficiently, right? So why chase it? Obviously, you don't chase it, but you don't really want to give the ground for the enemy to repush you, which is what WND will do if we move forward. Vermont slowly makes it back towards C with the company of the Delny. And here, in what situations do we end up? This smoke train that we talked about has made its way into basically green spawn, bullying Ohio destroyer and cruiser to the other side, giving ground for the daring to evolve for free in this area. Because what you got to understand is, when you're pushing somewhere, you're not only trying to kill. You may not kill what you're pushing, but you're always giving ground for your teammates to play. By completely bullying the A-force of Shaft to the border, they're giving ground here for this daring to play. And this is going to end with a Vincent kill from the daring torpedoes, because it's capable of freely involving on the green side of the map, torping into what should be a safe spot contesting B for the green team. All this because enough ground was given by the push on the 1 line. This is all pre-planned, by the way. They initiate this push not for the early gains, but to end up in this very scenario we are describing here, and it works perfectly. Same goes on the other side. You play the passive game, as WND early on, kite the Delny, make it seem like disregard the cap. But when time's right, you come back. Put the pressure with the Delny on the broadside of the Marseille. Vermont pushes back, puts pressure on the Des Moines here, which died, puts pressure with Crossfire on the BB that's going to try to contest B. All of this is very well planned from the beginning to end up with this sort of result. And Shaft were not able, maybe they recognized what was going to happen, but they couldn't bring the answer. They couldn't stop WND from bullying them away from relevant position, and they couldn't establish enough control past C to keep Vermont and Delny from coming back and pressuring them from behind. They sent a lot of forces. If we get back to earlier, I'm going to remove my marks here, get back to earlier in the game, they sailed Des Moines in the middle. If we go here, they sailed Des Moines in the middle, double destroyer in the middle, and they sent Vincent afterwards in the middle, right? They all clustered in the middle and give all the ground to WND to envelope them on both sides and end up just choking them. Because against very strong teams that envelope like this, you can't withstand the pressure long enough. And it showed.
Thank you for that very detailed analysis.